This is Anthony, and it's an interesting day. It's a wonderful day. This is the first day of this podcast. It's a new podcast. It's going to be known as a Broad Experience Podcast. In this podcast, we are going to be looking at, and I don't know exactly what we are going, but I'm going to need you here to help us to know what we are going to be sharing on this podcast. But I believe it's going to be a very interesting podcast, and especially because we have you here. Right now, we are live. We may get a few people who come on live because I've told one or two people, but not many. And if you have questions, you can always send the questions. If you have a comment to make about the podcast, you're welcome. And I'm excited for this first episode of this podcast, and it's going to be a big podcast, but it's going to depend upon you. If you like this episode, please leave a thumbs up there, uh, then share it with your friends, and make sure if you're watching on YouTube, because we are live on YouTube and Facebook right now. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're on Facebook and you haven't followed me, please do. And let's have a good time exploring abroad. And abroad could be anywhere. Could be someone who is in the first world looking at the third world, or people from the third world looking to go first world. And we don't know what's ahead, but I believe it's a wonderful journey. Surprise, surprise, surprise. On this first episode, we have a guest. His name is known as Timothy. And I just met him online. And once I said I need to start a new podcast, he said, I would be interested to be a guest. And I said, you're going to be the first guest. So please help me welcome live here on this first episode of A Broad Experience, Timothy.
Hello, Anthony.
Hi, how are you?
Well, first of all, I can't tell you how excited I am to be your first guest on your podcast. That makes me feel really special, and I'm honored to be that first guest. So, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yes, we are also honored to have you here on this first episode of our podcast. And
Fantastic.
I'm going to tell you something that I thought once I saw your name, and I'm like, okay, uh, I couldn't determine who's going to be the first guest. We just put it out there in the universe and we say, okay, who's going to be the first guest? And happens to be Timothy. Timothy happens to have been my father.
Well, maybe a little cosmic connection going on there somehow, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's nice. Okay, awesome. It's a great name, Timothy. It's a little bit old school, but it's just certainly, and sometimes people call me Tim as well. I go by both Timothy and Tim. So you have your choice as well. But Timothy works great for me.
Okay, that's wonderful. Just like other people call me Tony. And I realized by moving and meeting with many different people, there are many different ways of saying someone's name. I am from Kenya and I land in Greece, and I find in Greece we have Anthony, but they don't call him Anthony. They call him Antonio.
Adonis. Or
Adonis. If I go to Italy, they're going to call me Antonio. If I go to France, they're going to call me Antoine.
Antoine, yes.
Exactly. Same name, different ways of pronouncing.
But I think that's awesome that everybody's got their version of your name, so it's not like that it's so difficult or that there's only one version. I think that speaks a lot for how the world works, and everybody's got a version of your name, and I like that.
Sure. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to discover new words, new ways of looking at things. Do we have a different version of it now, apart from shortening it from Timothy to Tim? Do we have a different version in some countries that you have been to, or maybe come into contact with people from those countries?
Well, in Greece for sure, there's a version of Timothy, and it's pronounced, I think, kind of two ways. I've heard it because some of my very good friends in Greece call me by my Greek name of Timothy, and it's Timotheos.
Oh yeah,
Timotheos or Timotheo. It depends on how that accent goes. I'm not, but but Timotheos is the Greek version of Timothy, and
Yeah,
of course it has a biblical root. I think you
yeah,
know that from your father.
yeah.
So that name travels back, but and then uh, I had some friends in India
Mm-hmm.
who pronounce the I instead of Tim. They would pronounce it like a long E. Team, they would call me sometimes, which
Okay.
I thought was very endearing as well. But but so as far as I know, those are the only two kind of variations.
Yeah.
But because not because, but that's as far as I know.
Mm. Going to the second name, some people would always ask me, "Hey, how do we pronounce your second name?" And it's been difficult for people. And I don't know about yours. Is it just the way it appears there? I read
I
it
would
like I read
because
it in
I
English.
looked at it the other day actually before we started talking to try to pronounce or figure out how I might pronounce it.
Yeah,
Moriori, would that be
you,
correct?
you did try. You did try.
Is that close?
Yeah, it's very close. It's actually pronounced Moirore.
Moiori. Okay.
You tried. And how do we say your second name is just, is that the English word? Like,
Yes,
and
better exactly. My family name had roots in the German language, which
okay.
originally was von Bender, and
Yeah.
the Bender in like many names came from what your job was, and the von Bender, the bender, was the person who bent the metal part around a barrel.
Okay.
You know, when they made the barrels with the staves,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
together with the ring of metal around the top and bottom to hold things together. That person who made that round, bent that metal was the Von Bender. And when my family first came to the United States a couple generations ago, they dropped the Von and it just turned out as Bender, Bender. So it's a shortening, and many. I was born in America, by the way. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. Please tell us a bit about yourself. We would love
Well,
to. Yeah.
I, it's a good start. I was born in the United States in California.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't tell you exactly when because then you'll know how old you are. But I'm how old I am. But I'm
Yeah.
a product of the '50s, and then when I finished school, university, I pretty much immediately left the United States because I wanted to travel the world.
Mm.
I had a fascination with traveling. And then later on down the line, I immigrated to Sweden, which is where I'm talking to you from now.
Okay.
And then I also started about 43 years ago a love affair with Greece. And
Mm.
in 1984, I ended up on a very small Greek island, which I immediately fell in love with. And I still live there to this day half the year. So I live half the year, 6 months of the year, during the winter here in Sweden. And during the summers, I live on this little tiny Greek island with only about 2,000 people. That's absolutely beautiful. And I've been living there since 1984. So, and my wife and I, we have a house there, and our kids come, and our granddaughter comes, and we all enjoy the beautiful Greek island life during the summer. And you know
Wow.
how beautiful Greece is during the summer.
Yeah, 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 definitely. That's interesting. Very interesting. What could be the island if I am?
We live on the island of Ios
Oh, yes.
in the Cyclades, in the Cyclades. Yeah,
I've heard about it. I haven't had the chance to go there. Maybe I'll visit there soonest just to
it's
feel
a beautiful,
why it
beautiful
is.
island. Still
Yeah.
a little bit old school. It hasn't been to overly developed really, and there's no airport, so you have to arrive by boat, which is always an exciting way to travel through the Greek islands. And it still has this old kind of Kyklades feel with the white houses and the blue roofs and blue doors and shutters. And Eos in particular has 53 beaches, lots of beaches, and that's why I fell in love with it. I'm a water sports person. I grew up with water sports and worked in the water sports industry my whole life.
Okay.
And when I landed there, I just fell in love with the beautiful beaches and the crystal clear water and the palm trees and everything. It was the complete package. And somehow I didn't plan on it when I first left there that I would never, when I first got there, that I would never leave, but it happened that way. I basically stayed there, and it's such a beautiful island. So maybe you have a time to come out, Anthony, and visit.
Oh yeah, that would be. We'll try. Maybe this summer I'll go. I'll come back down to yours. We'll see. You never know. You
You'll
never.
love
And I've had those love stories of people who've come to Greece and fell in love, and they said, "I'm not leaving." And then maybe I could be one of the stories. I don't know. We'll see.
it. Probably could be, Anthony, and that's why you're still there. And
Yeah.
that, and I'm not the only one in EOS who feels that way. There's something magical either in the water, in the air, or something on EOS that many people, when they get there, they fall completely in love with it and somehow stick there. We have a very strong community there of people, both Greek and both expats, who absolutely feel very strongly about the island and love the island for what it is and how it is. And I'm one of those stories. And many of my expat friends and Greek friends who have come from maybe Athens, they came from, or somewhere else in mainland Greece, and ended up in Eos and said, "Hey, there's something magic about that island." And then
Hmm.
when I was in Eos, I met somebody that took me here to Sweden, and that's how the Swedish component of my life started as well. So it all kind of hinged upon my being on that lovely island of Eos. Uh, so it's a fun story.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Quite interesting. And I'm curious. I would like to go a bit back on when you started to travel. What was that trigger? You just wanted to go see the world? Was it from an influence of the movies, or maybe a friend or family? What?
That's a good question, and I have the absolute answer for it without ever guessing, because it's a story that I've told many times. Because through my travels, and I traveled the world by myself with my wife uh, for many, many years, and I've worked and lived in many places around the world. And that when you meet people and you're not from their country, that subject always comes up. Hey, what are you doing traveling here? And I've traveled into some weird places at weird times. In the early '80s, I was traveling all through Eastern Europe when it was still part of the USSR. I traveled up into China in the early '80s when it was very difficult. And people are very curious of what you're doing in their country, which is awesome, because that's what makes us human, is to be curious about each other. Otherwise, how boring would it be?
Yeah.
And my love affair with traveling started when I was about 12 years old, and I had a book that was about England.
Okay.
And in this book about England, it had a chapter about London, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And something about the pictures and reading and looking at something about London absolutely captivated me. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, what an awesome looking place. I want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I was 12 years old. That thought of going to London stuck into my head. Now, let's fast forward from when I was 12 years old to when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I went to a college that had not semesters, we had trimesters. And one of the trimesters was what we called winter term.
Mm-hmm.
And during the winter term, you could do special projects if you were studying something, or if you were art, you could do art projects. It didn't matter. So I studied art in school, and one of my projects, and I have a minor in art history. I loved art history. So what I wanted to do during my winter term was to go abroad to Europe and look at all the art that during my class I saw pictures of, but I wanted to see this art and these statues and these paintings. I wanted to see everything in real life. So I
Yeah.
put together a program for my winter term and got an approval to do it, to go to Europe for the winter term and study art.
Mm-hmm.
But I would do that by myself, just by, like, this was in the early 80s, with a backpack,
Yeah.
like nothing on wheels like there is today, but literal backpack and a Eurail pass. And when I bought my ticket from the United States, I landed first in London, England. That was the very first step I took out of the country as an adult. I'd been to Mexico before and the Bahamas. Let's not count that, almost, because it's so close to the United
Yeah,
States.
it was very close.
But and I stepped off that plane in London, and I was like a little kid. I wanted to go to the pub. I wanted to see the castle. I wanted to see the I wanted. I used to just go take a day card and ride the tube around and get off in random places just to walk around because I was so excited about it.
Mm.
Fish and chips, a pint of beer in a pub, and at that time I don't know, 18 years old, and in the United States you couldn't drink until 21. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I'm 18 and I can have a beer, which was awesome as well. But so that was the beginning of my trip through Europe, and I Eurailed all through Europe. But I was so enamored by London. I loved the place. It was everything I dreamed of. You know, sometimes you dream of something, and when you get it, you're like, I don't know what that was about. But
Yeah.
if I had unlimited wealth today, I would buy a little flat in London so I could go whenever I wanted
Yeah.
and stay there, just because even to this day, I love going there. So if there's anybody out there watching the podcast and you have an extra flat in London that you want to give away, contact me through Anthony, and that would be awesome. I
Yeah.
still
You put it out there in the
I put it
universe.
out there anyway.
You
And
you
it's one of the capital cities of the world. I mean, there's New York, there's London, there's Sydney, there's Hong Kong. And it was beautiful. So that was where my traveling started. And then the next year was my final year of school, and when I finished school, I basically started traveling almost full time, let's say.
That's interesting and wonderful. Now you talk of unlimited wealth, and we'll come to today when you can afford to live in two countries. But before we come into that, how did you fund your first trips? Because you are in college. Were you saving, or did your parents give you some money, or how did that happen?
Oh, wow, that's a great question as well. Uh, Originally, as I told you, I've worked my whole life in the water sports industry, because when I was very young, I was a very high level sailor and windsurfer, and I loved the water and the beach and the sun and the sand and all this stuff. So when I was in high school, I was very motivated to try to stay in the to stay with sailing and windsurfing, and towards when I graduated, I didn't have any plans to go to school. I was going to go out to California and somehow get a job in the sailing and windsurfing. However, at this same time, since I was 8 years old, I was a swimmer and a diver. And
Okay.
I was swimming on quite a high level. And I swam because I loved the water, and
Mhm.
I dove because I loved the water. And so I didn't have any real plans. And then towards the end of the beginning of August, I got a letter in the mail from this college that had a very strong powerhouse swimming team.
Mhm.
Had some friends that I swam with that were also going to that school. And this letter was from the swimming coach. And he wrote to me and he said, Tim, we've seen your times for swimming, and we know some of the people you swim with, and you come very highly recommended. We would like to offer you a scholarship to come swim at the school, and if you take that scholarship, we will pay for your school. And this came, Anthony, when I mean this came out of nowhere, it
Yeah.
literally, I had no idea about it. It was this letter. I opened it up and I about freaked. And I was like, Mom, Dad, look at this. What, and I didn't know what to do originally. I was like, what? Because I was kind of planning on going my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, I mean, here's a chance. And this was a little private school. I never could have afforded to go there. Period. My parent, we couldn't have afforded to go to this private school. It was very expensive. And they said, listen, here's an opportunity that literally is falling into your hands.
Mm.
Sure, you could give it up, but think of what doors will open if you start to go to college. And it wasn't even a university, it was a college. There were less than 1,000 people in this little college, very small.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, let's go. And my mom and I drove down to look at this college 2 weeks before it started, to meet the swimming coach, to meet some of the other swimmers and divers, to have a look around before I made a decision. And it was absolutely fantastic. So I said, let's do it. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got to school, just by being a good swimmer. So I was very fortunate. And also, to back that up, I was a very medium student. My grades wouldn't have gotten me into school.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I got to the school, my grades went stronger. And my senior year, I was a straight A, Dean's List 4.0 student, and my parents freaked out. So that was my basis for my education, and it was fantastic. I'm so happy that happened to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. So it was about traveling out of the first time that you talked, and then it started to happen. And initially, you had the picture of going around the world, and yes, you've been to those few countries that you've been to. About how many to date have you stepped into?
Oh, I have. I'm gonna say for sure in the 30s, if not the low 40s. I 1 year I had a complete round the world airline ticket with three different airlines that took me literally around the world. That for 1 year I went everywhere. I was in fact in Kenya, in beautiful Kenya, which was awesome. And I've been all over the United States as well. I've been pretty much all over Europe. I've been a couple places in Africa. I've been to India twice. I've been to Brazil, and I've been I spent many years in Egypt. I couldn't tell you the number, but it's quite a few. And also I want to remind you that I started traveling before the internet, where you couldn't just go to booking.com and all of a sudden have a room waiting for, you really had to fight for, not fight, but it was a different style of traveling. I don't know if were you traveling before the internet, Anthony?
Yeah, my first travel was before the internet. And now, talking of abroad experiences, I moved to a country that was next to us. That was Uganda.
Yep.
When I had gone there, the phones had just I had my second phone, but those were not digital phones. They were not smartphones.
Yep.
They were those that you press on a keyboard, on some buttons.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing happened because the vehicle that I boarded, I lost my phone going to Uganda. So I had to stay 1 week without a phone. That was not the internet age, so people would not know what was going on.
But you couldn't go a week without your phone now.
Yeah, you could. Now you're talking of a week. We are talking of a few hours, like 2 hours. It's like
You're
My
like, oh my gosh, I left my phone at home. I'm going out to dinner. I can't survive without my telephone. Nah. Yeah.
yeah, my phone.
And I think that's interesting. I grew up with our first TV was black and white, for gosh sakes, with 4 channels or something, and no remote. You know, you had to stand up and change the channel by hand and stuff. Um, but yeah, that's nice. Yeah, good.
Being from the States, you are very well advanced. Our TV station, okay, we had a black and white TV. We only had one TV station. It used to open at 5 p.m. and close at 12 midnight.
Yeah. Wow, have things changed?
Now, things have changed. I mean, for the years that we've been on this planet. Now, I'm curious, and I don't know, and everybody is curious right now. With the advancement of AI, what will happen in the next 10, 20 years? Where are we going to be?
Oh, with Anthony, I and maybe it's my age and generation talking,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the possible impact, and I'm going to even say slash threat by AI is as bad, if not worse, than our climate change problem that we're seeing now. And that's just my opinion, because there are loads of people that say there's no such thing as climate change.
Yeah.
But the pace that AI is developing is so incredibly fast. And then also, when some of the creators of AI, or many of them, get together and they write a letter warning about what might happen if guardrails aren't put in place, then I believe we have to stop and rethink things.
Mm-hmm.
Albert Einstein was one of the huge voices against nuclear weapons and all these things. And he was one of the guys who helped, and Oppenheimer, they were like having nightmares that they developed this technology, and look what happened. I mean, some of it for good when you can make power plants, but some of it not so good when you can literally, the whole world can be destroyed at a couple presses of some buttons. So I think, and pretty soon it's going to be too late, or maybe it is too late. You know, once the genie's out of the bottle, as they say, once the cat's out of the bag, it's too, and maybe it is too late. But I believe that there needs to be some guardrails and some discussion and something to be done before. And it's happening so fast. I mean, you know, we know how fast it is, and profit driven, and the profit blinds a lot of people as to what might the potential danger be. I'm not a computer guy either, so when you ask me anything about computers, Anthony, I'm a digitally not very experienced.
Yeah. I get it.
I can figure out how my telephone works. My granddaughter can do stuff on the telephone that I can't do. But you don't have to have too much background into figuring out that there can and probably will be abuse of AI, if not already being abused with a lot of these deep fakes. And I mean, you can go on and get music made from not one human being touching an instrument, and it's incredible music, but I don't know. I think we have to be careful. What do you think?
I think with everything, there's always going to be, from ages ago and into the future, there is always going to be those two sides of the coin. There's going to be the good side and the bad side. It has always been, it will always be. There's going to be a good side to it and a bad side to it.
Yeah.
And we've just got to choose. I mean, whatever it is within our power to do, to make right, then we do. Whatever it is that we can do good, then we do it.
Yeah.
And just reap the less to fate. And I don't like, right now, as we are talking, in the next few hours, people are wondering what's going to happen to Iran.
It's a scary, Yeah. I mean, absolutely. The threat has been put out there from both sides. And I mean, I I was pretty happy some years ago to be growing up in a time when wars were very far and few between. I mean, there's there's never I don't think there's ever been a time when nothing is happening. That's the nature of the world we live
Yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah.
with good
There's
and bad.
always something going on.
But there has been some times where there's been not so much bad stuff happening, and I'm happy to have lived, I believe, in. And again, every generation is going to say that about their life as well, because it's all relative. I mean, my dad fought in World War II.
Hmm.
Holy cow! I can't imagine what that time must have been like in the world when you had that going on. And I was a teenager during the Vietnam War, which was horrific for Vietnam and for the United States and for the world as a whole as well. So I mean, this is one of the things that we all struggle with, humanity.
Yeah,
But the good thing is, Anthony, I believe that with things like we're doing here, discussing things openly, this is how we get ourselves out of the shit. Not
yeah.
by saying, "Oh, I don't want to talk to you about whatever," but by
Hmm.
talking about, because we're all different, but there's some things that we can all agree on, and the only way to find that out is by having these dialogues.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Exactly.
here, holy cow!
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I'm inviting all those viewers who are watching right now. If you're watching live, because I see we have some people watching live, if you have a question, please put it forward. Any kind of question,
Awesome.
because you are here on a broad experience. Ask Timothy any kind of question, or even ask Anthony any kind of
Oh,
question.
okay. Now you're putting me on the spot. No, but but Anthony, for sure, I believe that through dialogue and through people getting together for honest discussion is one of the most important ways forward. And you and I we've never met,
Yeah,
but I would love to sit down with you and have a beer or a Coke or whatever, and continue this, because we're all human beings. We put our pants on one leg at a time, and we sleep at night, and we wake in the morning, and we have to eat some food, and we want safety for our kids, and we want a roof over our head. And I think we all want the same things. And somehow, not because of us, but it tends to be some levels higher than us, that shit gets lost. And we maybe need to start back again with the basics, which is us and the people who are out there. I don't know who's out listening, but maybe there's some people that go, hey, yeah, this is how we got to go, and we got to speak to each other. And because when we don't speak to each other, nothing gets done.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And someone said that the reason things are happening the way they are happening out there in the world is because we have those people who are bold enough to put their negative agendas forward, and you are just sitting and watching and saying nothing, and so nothing happens. If they don't hear your voice, then they'll still continue to do the bad things that they.
Exactly. And your voice doesn't count unless you use it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, and let's kind of go back to what the podcast is about, traveling, and the amount of people on the years of travel. I've started traveling in 80, in the early 80s, let's say
Mhm.
80, 82, 83. All over, and I've met so many people, and the easiest thing to do is sit down and have a conversation with people.
Mm.
If you walk around with blinders on, or some, and never like, I've sat in the bar and said hello to somebody sitting next to me. I have no idea who they are, but we could have sat there the whole night and maybe drank a beer and never had a conversation. Or I can take a chance and go, hey, what are you drinking? Nice beer. And all of a sudden, we make a connection about something, because that we're all human.
Mm.
That's important, and that's what we're doing right here, you and I.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
it's not particularly difficult, I don't think, is it? No.
It isn't. It isn't. It isn't difficult. It's just, I mean, although it's relevant, I can say it's relevant. There are those people who would not approach a stranger to have a conversation. There are those people who would sweat at the idea of saying hello.
Well, that that's funny that you bring that up because that, and also I think there's some context that has to be happen. Like I'm not going to walk down the street and just stop somebody and go, "Hey, what's going on?" But
Yeah,
certainly, if I'm in a place, as I said, if I'm sitting having a beer at a bar and somebody next to me is, I mean, the 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 barriers of conversation are less in that format than if I
yeah,
was walking down the street and stop somebody and go, "Hey, what's going on?" Or signing up to meet for a group of people. There's organizations now. Every city you go to, if you're an expat, there's a Facebook group. There's a international people's organization. There's a meetup group. There's and this is one of the positive things about our social media,
yeah,
to actually use it socially, not just to complain about who's doing what and this and that, but to literally bring people together so that we can, because the telephone and the digital age has been horrendous for shit like that. you
mm,
know People will sit there and close themselves off except for their telephones, and we need to kind of maybe push the telephone to the side a bit. And okay, I'm on a telephone now, but in public or in social situations, and put down the telephone and let's get back down to basics, which is people meeting people.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, exactly.
So good for you to promote that.
Yeah, I'm curious because you mentioned of having conversations, and we are talking about abroad experiences in the countries that you've been to and you are still going to. Tell us about some of the wonderful conversations that you've picked up with a stranger.
I literally, Anthony, couldn't tell you how many conversations I've had, but I tell you what, I will remember that if if you speak to somebody honestly and enthusiastically, you will get that back in return when you speak. And I've met so many people just by starting with a small conversation. I spent years traveling around the world by myself, and if I didn't speak to other people, I would have been the loneliest guy in the world.
Mm,
Because, or you have to wait until somebody else comes up to you, and that doesn't always happen either, because everybody might be thinking, "Oh, maybe that person's interesting, but I'm not going to go speak to them. Maybe they'll speak," and then all of a sudden nobody does anything. So I learned, and I'm going to tell you something else. When I was young, I was a very shy kid. I was a very shy individual,
okay.
but traveling alone helped bring me out to know that it's going to be a lonely time traveling if you stay to yourself and you just sit there. Maybe the person next to you on the airplane. I mean, if you fly alone, almost always you sit next to somebody
Yes.
on an airplane. And I'm
Mm,
not saying everybody you go, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" Blah, but you can kind of gauge if you have some social competence about how people and the people you can say hello, or just sit down, "Oh, hello," and see what happens.
mm. Any any specific story that you can tell us that maybe an opportunity came up, something like that, or maybe how did you meet your wife? Maybe anything.
Well, I met my wife. My wife is from Finland, so we have an international relationship. And I met her. I worked many years in a bar, and one night I was off work, and I decided to go to the other side of the bar and have a beer and read the newspaper. So I was sitting there reading the newspaper. And generally, if you see somebody reading the newspaper, that's also a signal that you don't go up and say, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" Because so again, you have to use some clues. But I was reading the newspaper, and then in comes this girl and this guy, and they sat almost next to me. There was one stool in between, and they were drinking and laughing and having a good time, and they were speaking Finnish, which I know what Finnish sounds like. And she was a very attractive young lady. And so somehow, I can't remember who introduced each other first, but I put the paper down and somehow I joined into the conversation, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
We we talked and we had another beer and we talked some more and we talked and talked, and then somehow there was some phone numbers exchanged, and then within a couple days we had a date. It's simple as that. It was, and had I been the kind of person that could not speak to anybody, I would have never met my wife.
How many years ago?
Well, I have to tell you, because of all my traveling, I got married very late in life, and we just celebrated our 13th wedding
Oh, okay.
uh, uh, last month on the 23rd of March. And so I've known her for 15 years, and we've been married 13 years. So I because of my traveling, and I was a kind of like a beach bum, windsurfing and sailing my way around the world. It wasn't very conducive to getting married or having kids at the time. But
Is it something that you regret about, or you are okay with it?
I could have regretted it. But when I married my wife, I also got a stepdaughter
Oh, okay.
in the bargain, and
Mm-hmm.
she, the most incredible stepdaughter one would ever ask for.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a little daughter who is my granddaughter now. So I was so lucky, Anthony. I can't tell you how lucky I was, because I thought I had given up that ability, and I love kids. Oh, I love children.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fortunate enough to meet somebody who understood how my life was. Uh, I actually took her for like an interview week in Greece. I said, "Hey, listen, I live on this little island half the year. Do you want to come and have a look at it? Because if we're going to continue our relationship, this is going to be a part of our life together, because I have a house here and blah blah blah." And she absolutely adored it. So that was the other key as well. And then our little granddaughter now comes to Eos and plays on the beach, and so there's another generation there. So I was actually lucky, Anthony, to be able to have somebody to call my stepdaughter. She's awesome. She's so incredible, and that gives me that joy of and to have a stepdaughter as well. So I was lucky.
Wow, wonderful. And it's good to, it's never too late. Never
No,
too, it's never too late.
never. It's never. My mother, bless her soul, had a boyfriend. She died at 97 years old, and her boyfriend was 99 years old. And they walked around and went on dates and held hands. And I, it's never too old to do anything, to switch jobs, to meet your partner, to it's never too old.
Wow. Did you say they were also mixed, like from different countries? Or
Yeah, well,
German?
parents,
Oh, German?
my parents.
Yeah?
No, my parents, my
You're talking
grandmother.
about your grandfather. Okay, sorry for that.
My grandmother was born in Germany. My grandfather as well, and so I'm just second generation American, because obviously Americans is full of all kinds of immigrants, and that's been a big story in the United States of our history. And I still have family in Germany. So
Wonderful. So, yeah, talking of experiences, have you met with horrible, have you had some bad experiences traveling the world that you say, oh, that was bad, that was worse? I mean,
yeah.
anything you can tell us?
Well, I won't go into specifics, but it's like life. I mean, traveling is a microcosm of life. There's good and there's bad, and you're gonna meet loads of good people, but you're also gonna meet bad people. So it doesn't matter where you are, what country. There's never a country with only good people or only bad people, but there's always a percentage of people that are going to be the bad people, and there's going to be a percentage, and we always hope that the percentage of the people that are good are way more than the percentage of people that are bad. That's first of all.
Yeah.
And then part of your awareness is who who you're talking to, where you're going. There are places, obviously, that you maybe don't want to go at certain times, or you have to figure that out as well. And I've had a couple. Uh, experiences that were negative, but
Mm.
that's life. Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't.
that's life.
That's life. It doesn't matter where you are. There's always going to be a potential negative experience somewhere for you, and you
Yeah.
just want to make those minimum and try not to get hurt or killed by them. If I'm to be honest with you, so yeah.
Talk to someone who's never traveled and maybe inspire them to travel.
There are loads of people around the world who don't travel, and that travel is a personal thing. Maybe, like, I have friends who grew up in the house that their parents grew up in, and then their grandparents grew up in as well, so they're like third, and their kids live there, so there's four generations living in the same town, in the same house. I don't have those roots, and I admire having those kind of roots, but there's always there's a cost to having those roots, and that's maybe not going out and seeing or living in the big world. So there's a plus and a minus to everything.
Hmm.
My plus is I've traveled around the world, but I don't have those long-term roots, and that's why I'm now focusing on living in two places, here in Sweden and in Greece, where I've been living for a long time, because those are now my roots that I've established. And then my wife is there, and our kids are there, and our grandkids are going to be there. So that's maybe the beginning of those roots, hopefully.
Mm.
And the people who don't, 50% of Americans, and I know this because 50% of Americans don't have a passport.
50%.
Yeah, that's a
Mm.
lot.
Well,
Uh,
that's a lot.
and but that's okay. If you don't travel and you don't want to travel, why would you have a passport? Right.
You don't need it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, I get that. Um, Now, because you live between two countries, and we know at this point that you love Greece because of its summer, why did you choose Sweden?
Well, there's a Swedish woman involved in that, and that obviously that because even though my wife was born in Finland, she carries a Swedish passport, and now this is and it's a fantastic country to establish a base in. Like I've been living here in 20 since 1998 or whatever.
Yeah.
So and I have my Swedish citizenship. I immigrated here, and this just happened to be where I ended up. And if you meet a woman and fall in love with a woman and she's from Ecuador, well, maybe you end up in Ecuador, but you
Ah,
don't. That's not the first thing you ask when you meet a woman. Is, oh, where are you from?
yeah, how often do you go there if you're not a relevant? So those are no questions that you rush into asking.
No, exactly, and it's just how, like, life works out in funny ways for everybody, and ways you don't plan. I never planned that, and had 35 years ago you told me where I ended up, I would say, you're crazy. No way.
But at least you had a clue, you have an idea, you had a dream, maybe. Is it like you didn't have a dream that of a place that you would tell us?
No, Anthony, not really. I think my dream was to be able to travel.
Just to travel.
Well, but the thing with the traveling is that when you start to go to places, you start to find places that you want to go back to, and then you also find places you don't want to go back to. And slowly over the years, I made a list in my head of places I wanted to go back to, and I went back to those places for many, many years and still do. And there are places that I was quite happy going to once, seeing them and thinking, okay, this is not where I want to go back to. However, the place I first wanted to go back to, I still would like to go back again, because there's always a dream of going somewhere else. I think maybe
Yeah, yeah. There's always that dream.
but it's
Yeah.
a
Thank you for that. And even with podcast guests, there are guests that you would want to come back, and there are guests you just want to have a one time. I would want you to come back at some point, but I don't know the viewers. Please, you can leave us a comment if you're watching live, or if you're watching the recorded uh, version of this podcast. Leave us a comment. Ask questions that you would like Timothy to answer in the future, if he's going to be willing also to come back, because
I would, and I would love to come back if you would have me. That would be super awesome. And maybe I come back during the summer and we have a conversation from Greece.
so we yeah, so maybe we have a live podcast instead of a camera online. We have a face-to-face podcast. We'll see. That would be
Oh,
great.
that's an awesome idea. We can
Yeah,
sit or sit in a taverna and open a beer and have a live podcast.
yeah, and a Coke. I don't take beer myself.
Okay, I have a beer matter. I have
But
a Coke.
you had that choice before. I mean, Coke, a beer, and then so
Either way,
have a Coke.
awesome. And listen, hey, I thank you a million thank yous for having me on for your first episode. It was really an honor, and I would like to come back again if you'd have me.
It's our pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for honoring this invite. We've really enjoyed. Although the guests, the viewers have not said anything, but I know at some point they're going to be saying something, because this is
Hopefully they will.
yeah,
And we'll see each other again then, Anthony. Okay.
this is just the first episode. So I'm going to end the stream. Stay right here, Timothy, and you who is out there watching, stay also there. Click on subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, so that you, and also the notification bell, so that you get notified the next time that we are going to be live or upload any video. It's such oh, I see a comment as we are going. We have a comment here, and this is coming from James Kamau. Says yes, he's voting for that face to face.
Nice. We'll do it then.
Yeah, thank you very much, James Kamau, for that comment. So face to face
Absolutely.
is
Much better to sit down across from each other at the table, break bread, and talk about life.
yeah. This summer is gonna be happening face to face. Most probably here in Greece. Oh,
We
yeah.
can do it.
That would be
Always,
easy.
I'm coming through Athens for a couple days. Maybe we can sit down in Athens and have a face to face.
Okay, we'll see. Time will tell. We never know about the future, as you said. So they're just things we put out there in the universe, and then we'll see how it goes. So thank you, James, and everybody else who's watching. You can always leave a comment even after we are through with this live broadcast, and question, comment, suggestion. What would you like to see in future episodes? This is just the first episode. Please tell us and guide us the way ahead. And it's been such a pleasure. I've been your host, Anthony Moirore, and we want to really thank our first guest, Timothy Bender, for coming. Bye for now.